enjoy the ride, and let's see how can we contribute to the better understanding of the role of villages in the future, and of course, how to engage in order to make it happen. First of all, what is a smart village? And here I would just like to briefly share with you a definition that's been used in the EU. Smart village is a place, and it's about rural people who take the initiative to find practical solutions to the downsides and to the exciting new opportunities arising locally, which gives us an overview really focusing on people and the people's needs in the rural area. Which of course doesn't mean that this is undeveloped area. This is the area that has equal needs for the future development as cities have, except of course that it's much more personal, it's much more engaging because people know each other. They are much faster in sharing the ideas once they have a chance, once there is a platform that offers them this kind of opportunities. So today we will discussing this issue and trying to get points of view from different continents, from all over the world. The purpose really is of today's session to see how our villages perceived in different parts of the world. Are villages evolving or declining in its role? What is the meaning of the word village in today's world? And of course, what is the meaning of smart? Then which are the key challenges and opportunities that villages are facing and that we can maybe collectively address? How does your work relate to the development of rural areas? And what are your, meaning speakers' experiences in financing the villages? And could the smart village concept be the future for villages altogether? So at the end, last but not least, how can we connect smart cities and smart villages better? This connection is needed, and that we are lacking sufficient and efficient logistic solutions in order to ensure that the cities have a smooth delivery of fresh food and other services that they might need. Currently, 80% of global population lives in the cities. And we know from historical point of view of the last 20,000 years that every pandemic has started in the city. So how can we ensure that the cities, which are growing so fast, are also safe, that they have the healthy lungs, that they can breathe, that they can actually live a healthy life? But at the same time, how can we connect them better with the villages and hopefully make countryside also more attractive for especially young people to stay and to develop their life in the countryside? Villages are a great asset, and they have a lot of unlocked potentials, and that they really are one of the biggest contributors to better relationship with the climate, of course, to ensure healthy food, green energy, and also for many new business opportunities, and tourism being just one of them. The future of ownership will be a big topic which needs to be addressed on both levels, rural and urban, especially subject of accountability, stewardship of assets, data, land, raw materials, and so on. The next one is the societal focus and priorities regarding the public space, then ethical discourse about humanity, technology, the planet as a whole, the new geopolitics, which are emerging right now, and of course, they are very much related to the future of countries, nations, cultures, and development of local identities. The concept of public health and education, the question of overall the identity of local communities, and the transformative power of localization and globalization working together in some sort of transparent way with the relating well to the laws of nature and developing trust.
I would like to begin by defining village in the Indian context. Census in India designates places with equal to or less than 5,000 inhabitants as a village. 80% of Indian villages have a population of less than 1,000. The geographical area covered by a gram panchayat or a village council is what we define as a village. 70% of the population in India lives in villages. Usually a homogeneous group of people with a strong caste system, with traditional social norms, with a high level of patriarchy, people who are dependent on the agricultural economy, uh, a group of people, a community that suffers from significant levels of poverty and lack of employment opportunities. That is what a typical village of India can be described as. Ever since I got this invitation, I've been thinking of what would be the key goal of a village community in order to shift from what it is today to a smart village. And in my perception, it would be the improvement in the Human Development Index. I would use that as the key goal for defining a smart village. What would we measure in terms of achievement? Life expectancy, people having a long and healthy life. Education, people being knowledgeable, right from children right up to the elderly, and families and individuals enjoying a good per capita income for a decent standard of living. What are the opportunities within villages in order to make them smart? We need to have soil management, watershed and water conservation, access to agricultural resources, which includes electricity, seeds, fertilizers, etc. Above all else, access to markets for selling their produce, a reasonable return for agricultural produce, those who are landless laborers, who are not farmers, an employment guarantee scheme for marginal, particularly for marginal farmers, an agricultural insurance scheme, and agro-based and allied industries for those who do not want to shift or migrate to urban areas and want to find entrepreneurship within the rural areas. We are doing all of this. It's not as though resources are not there and we are not having schemes and programs to address all of these challenges and problems. It's there. The problem is that we work in verticals, we work in silos. In India, that perhaps is the biggest problem. And if we want to create a smart village, connecting the dots, connecting these verticals is absolutely the key. Can this be done? Are there examples of this happening in the country as of today? Yes, there are good examples. Based on this experience, what the government is doing now, the government of India, they're establishing farmer produce organizations, and their key role is going to be integration and value chain establishment. Now, is there a role for digital integration? Yes, there is. How can we call a village smart, or for that matter, any community smart, which ignores half its population? And when I say half its population, I'm referring to girls and women. We need to, in eco-civilization, we need to include a socio-ecological model. We need to build movements that challenge the existing gender norms, build movements that challenge the politics of patriarchy, challenge the norms that discriminate against girls and women. I have to, very shamefully, I have to admit that in this country, the girl gets discriminated against right from the time she's in the womb, right till she is an elderly person. We have a rich agri and panchayati Raj heritage and culture. This should continue to be our civilizational identity. Instead of adopting corporatized industrial models of development, that are alien to us for creating smart villages in this country.
In Ghana, villages actually are sort of referred to or described as places of, let's say, destitute, a place of no hope, and then a place that there are less people, to which there is less infrastructure, there is less intentional designs of social frameworks that makes the inhabitants of this place able to grow internally and then outwardly. How I see villages should be a place where a group of people with a common understanding, drawing several principles to which they agree to evolve on. And then this has to do with, co-creation, building things out of our personal engagements within our peer-to-peer groups. Not having one centralized system to which actions or, directions are being, improvised. I have really diverse, let's say, information and knowledge in computer architecture and then data analysis, to which I'm able to create systems and then able to find leveraging points between how a system within agriculture system and then a system living within the realms of technology application could be merged, and find possible solutions to, making the systems evolve. We are now able to devise or develop a model based on biomimetics and then leverage that to our systems, to which they keep on evolving, but then there is still that hidden pattern that nature always, puts there that you could uncover just by creating systems where people are now able to, think for themselves, are able to build collective consciousness, and also you leverage that to developing their own ecosystem that works for them. If you're developing for 27,000 hectares, you need to size that development into, let's say, a more modular framework that is at least maybe about 15,000 square meters, and then creates that system of decision making, infrastructure, the social system, see how the people interact, within that same region before you are able to, let's say, conclude on going further. The whole idea is building, the next frontier for modern construction or the construction of civilizations. And, the slogan, inducting built by you, literally refers to you, the person coming to live within this city, as part of the co-creating process, because within this first phases, our whole intention is to open up a really collaborative platform for, people who might be potential citizens of this city to start engaging and putting down the foundational structures to which the whole emergence of the city comes true. The problem that we are actually identifying that is the core problem that is stifling innovations of let's say cities to become smart or villages to become smart is creativity. So when we are talking about smart villages and smart cities, there needs to be sort of like an industrial network structure, right? That creates the system of innovation, manufacturing, and all those things, to which the primary invention hubs could be built in the villages that is responsible for creating the raw produce, and then those channels with integrated mobility could be sent down to the cities or the bigger industrial places to be now converted into secondary products, and all these systems makes the whole process less carbon how do I say it gives the whole process a more advantage over carbon emission. Then the third solution would be a mixed reality pipeline that is literally having a decentralized internet, which is developed on blockchain, aesthetics. It is artificial intelligence agnostics. But then I love to explain how artificial intelligence built for a localized community could function without having, all the biases included. The last one will be power plants, that are smart renewable systems, which could be solar, wind, or hydro, or even thermal plants. But then they are monitored on smart technology to be able to distribute the energy to the places that they are needed.
The pandemic has changed many aspects of small villages. The first one is it has changed value. So the value of being connected to nature has increased immensely. And it has increased in the sense the societies have acknowledged that being in contact with nature is very much what we need, especially at this moment where our well-being is being impacted. There has been a lot of movement of people from the city centers, from the city of Buenos Aires and the city of Santiago coming back to small villages. We created with Alexander actually what we call circles of community response, and is a way of organizing the educational community in a very different way, which means the value it is within us in the way we organize ourselves. And this is quite key, important here in South America, especially because we are very much used to putting our kind of looking for backup from the city centers or from the Europe or the US. So what we do is we come together to resolve a problem in creative ways with the resources that we have. Resources are within us. We are giving special focus not only to our thinking and our cognitive capacities, but our feeling, our sensing, and our intuition, and how all of that gets integrating in our doing. And coming together and rethinking the way that we are doing things and putting value to the things that we have locally here. But we do it not only in an individual level, but into a community level. So we bring the consciousness towards ourselves and think, where do we want to go? What are the assets that we have and how we can improve that? How are things changing today? How can we kind of face that collectively, really connecting with the space and our human capacities, and bring something that is quite new, but is quite kind of reality-based into this moment here. So what happens is we are behaving in a different way that we are used to. And so that brings a lot of misunderstanding sometimes. But also there's a need of behaving in this way, being more open, collaborative, and also in sharing in such a way that heals the whole system. What it starts to happen is that there's self-organization. Groups self-organize in such a way that they kind of face and approach different challenges, that it's not about education only, you know, it's about how people want to face reality right now. Counterintuitive in this sense, usually here in small villages, not the smart ones, let's say, they wait for the system to kind of give something, you know, or support them in such a way. And what we're doing is we are shifting completely at the understanding and saying, well, we have these needs. How are we going to cope with this? What do we need? And how we can ask others to support us during our journey. And I think that's at the core of smart villages. It's like ownership of the movement and the transformation and the knowledge that we want to share as a local village that really puts us out there and makes us unique.
So I'm a person who comes from the city, but I've chosen to move into the farm. And part of my decision also comes from the fact that I was privileged enough to live for 2 years and study in a school in rural India. For me, is a very important understanding, which is both people and the environment we are inserted in shapes a lot of our cognition, the way we perceive reality, and the way we build our understanding of what development, for instance, is. Brazilian culture is very embedded with this idea that the rural area is not a good place to live in and to create your family and you know, the succession of the generations. Brazil is one of the countries that holds one of the greatest rates of inequality to access to land. Half of the farming land is owned by only 1% of the population. And at the same time, it is the majority of the food that supplies the whole country comes from mostly the small stakeholders' land. Even this data of how rural Brazil really is very questionable, because you see very small towns, villages kind of, where the main activities are related to farming and where sanitary conditions are not at all, let's say, in the urban patterns, and they're considered rural, they're considered urban. When has it become reasonable for us to understand that a developed nation needs to disconnect itself to the rural identity and to the rural potentials and focus on the rural limitations as well? I believe that the idea of a village comes together of the idea of a community which is bounded by shared geographical, economical, and a cultural reality. So people living in a specific territory, and when you live in a specific territory, you're dealing with the same ecosystems resources which are available, and also the ones that aren't available. For most of our human history, we weren't really settled in places. We were mostly nomad populations, which moved from places to the other according to the seasons, according to food availability and resources availability. It was the birth of agriculture that promoted the first human settlements. And as a birth is, there was a whole process of gestation for people to finally learn how to cultivate seeds, how to make food. Observation of how nature works and how nature reproduces itself was really like the groundings of the movement towards settling humanity, towards making it able to produce food that you wouldn't need to be going from one place to the other if you had enough to accumulate and hold on for let's say, a dry season. It was a hegemonic choice for humans to settle and to really build the civilizations, the settlements, sustaining itself in the farming fields, sustaining itself in the production of food through the cultivation. Today, in my country, the food supply system is not a smart one. So why is it not a smart one? Because I think we go a little into the concept of what smart is. I think for something to be considered smart, for us to think of this conception, we need to connect with the idea of wisdom, with intelligence, and to connect with this, with the idea of real intelligence and you know, wise choice making regarding us as a species that has, you know, a bunch of functions and that are that need to deal with what the ecosystem is there for us. We need to connect. We need to be able to manage our living activities, to make them thrive while we meet our necessities and we make life on the planet better. If we are making farming an activity that has been damaging the very basic resources we need to sustain our villages, to sustain then the cities as well, then we're not making clever decisions. We're not making an intelligent process. We have come to creating systems where we cultivate multiple plants together with a very specific methodology. It's not like, oh, okay, let's plant many things together. No, we have some few years of trial and failure and understanding the behavior of each plant and things like that. And so we make consortiums of plants that thrive together, and alongside the plants that are economically important for our activity, we are always planting the plants that need to be there in order to fulfill an ecosystem service that is demanded. We have no longer time to be focusing, or rather not to focus on how can we make life on planet better, and associate that with our activities, obviously. So thinking about this concept, which seems a very interesting concept, I cannot but also think about our children. I believe that for villages to thrive, there must be a strong farming culture established, and this strong farming culture needs, in this world with climate changes and all sorts of desertification and big problems with ecosystems management. So for the farming culture to be strong and smart, it does need to have a good, effective technique to deal with the local resources available and create abundance from then on. And for this to be possible, we need to be working wisely with the right plans, considering the social and the economical context of the place we're working in. And for that to be possible, we need to be thinking of the succession of the generations.
Europe is one part of as a continent, but with our 27 member states and with the policies developed in member states, there are so many differences. So it's more talking about diversity, about different situations where you see a depopulation because people go to more developed parts of Europe, for instance, in Romania, Bulgaria, etc., and other parts of Europe who are really booming, who are urbanizing very fast. It's not good to jump into smart villages for 3 years and then to say, okay, and now we take another policy. This should be something deeper in our way of cooperation. In Europe, it's typically that agricultural policies has been transferred to the European level. We don't start from scratch, but what is important that we bring together people who are really working on the rural area, go the path to learn and to empower people who are experiencing with energy transition, with those things like the connectivity. And it was especially what I liked so much about Delfina's presentation. It started from the empowerment of people. We cannot say that there is one model complex with augmented reality and with all those kinds of things. We cannot reach the people there. We need to empower people into this development. We have now started a European-wide forum for smart villages just this year. And we will use the European funds and also the experiences in international cooperation to give our movement of these smart villages a push in a good direction.
There is a sense of identity even here among us, I think, among those who are participating in this. There's a sense of common unity or community. And that's very powerful. It is about how can we connect? Now, there are many ways of connecting. This is what Dr. Ashok began with, connecting the dots, right? And some of the connecting the dots are place-based. I was trying to keep track of the different definitions of community, of village that came up, of a smart village in particular, but of villages in general. And so there are several definitions. One is geographic area. A village is a geographic area. This is the village, it's here, okay? Another definition comes from population size. A village can't exceed a certain number of people, otherwise it becomes a city. So that's another definition of village, but you will see this is pretty abstract. We also have a village as economic and cultural identity. Sophie was talking about shared realities, right? And this is another way of thinking of village. I want to just share a few things that are coming out of this and to connect them with the broader conversation that we're having, and that is about a global eco-civilization. So this conversation we're having about smart villages takes place within the context of how do we cultivate the conditions, how do we engage in emerging the dynamics that might lead towards a global eco-civilization? What role do smart villages play in the emergence of a global eco-civilization? The importance of education, the importance of learning environments, and the village as a place where you can learn about life. You learn about the importance of interconnection. You learn about your connection with nature. You learn about the importance of heritage and of passing down knowledge from one generation to the next. In a village, you have up to 7 generations living at the same time. This is also the famous 7-generation rule. Working in silos, and this is something that Dr. Ashok mentioned right at the beginning, working in silos and the vertical schemes. This comes very much, again, from a patriarchal framework. We gotta wait for the government to tell us what to do. We gotta wait for the men to tell us what to do. We gotta wait for the cities to give us the support, etc. How do we build local self-reliance? So this brings in this idea of remembering, bringing our membership back in. And it's not just a membership with other human beings. It's a membership fundamentally with life. I think the eco-civilization concept is emphasizing this aspect of our membership in the web of life, the movement to engage in lifelong learning, again, but also life-wide learning. Life-wide learning is about being in your immersive environment, and there are the richest environments for learning are the ones found in villages, not the ones found in cities. We can bring to collective wisdom when we learn how to co-evolve with each other. How can we continue to thrive together? So when you leave this conversation, don't go away. Continue to connect. You have the Ecocivilisation website. You have ways of continuing to stay in the conversation. This is how we create the world we want to live in. Again, it's about being the systems you want to see in the world.